Even hearing you talk about the teachers and yoga and meditation and mindfulness and knowing that you live that, you're not the typical, politician, male, athlete, Catholic, Northeast Ohio guy. Before we kind of jump into the mindfulness piece, I am kind of curious, kind of the work that maybe you were doing, or if there were, any kind of trauma scars or, stuff that, kind of got into you. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talked about the good stuff, the mm-hmm. coaches, the role models, mm-hmm. the homemade food and love, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, was there some struggle in there too with all that?
Of course. I drove my pain into athletics. Mm-hmm. That's what drove me. And I see that as I, watch and learn about other athletes or high performers. A lot of times, movie stars, whoever, there's a lot of pain in there mm-hmm. that you're masking, you're trying to avoid. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to shovel the driveway and go play basketball, mm-hmm. and mm-hmm. figure this out. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're like, I can't remember what I was watching the other day. I think it was a podcast with like Ryan Holiday, who mm-hmm. does a lot of stoicism stuff. And it was just like, you're chasing your dad's affection. Mm-hmm. It's like, sometimes you're really doing that, mm-hmm. like in our, maybe our circumstances. And so how do I and I didn't know that at the time. It was just like, I'm in pain and I'm going to go outside because I love basketball mm-hmm. and I want to do good and do well. And I mm-hmm. was taught to work hard. So I'd shovel the driveway in the middle of the winter and shoot hoops, or I would hang the tire on the swing in my neighbor's mm-hmm. backyard, and I'd throw the football through it mm-hmm. and the lights on, and so I masked it or used it and drove me in these other ways. And then, really it was probably years later, like I kind of knew it was there. I never really dealt with it, I don't think in any significant way, until I started to get into, and this was, mm-hmm. 15 years ago, maybe, mm-hmm. where I really started to get into meditation, mm-hmm. breath work. Mm-hmm. I was doing some work, and I had a couple big like releases, with doing work with veterans. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's called Power Breath Workshop through the Art of Living, mm-hmm. Sri Ravi Shankar's group. Mm-hmm. They've adapted some of this Eastern breathing practices, pranayama. Most people would know it through mm-hmm. yoga, but like really intense stuff. They created a workshop for veterans to mm-hmm. heal their trauma. And I went through it a few times. Mm-hmm. And I remember like the first time I went through it, like just broke down and cried. And it was like 30 years of mm-hmm. shit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was like, boom.
There it was.
It was. Yeah. And I kind of intellectually like kind of figured it out.
Right.
But I was still really holding it in my body.
Yeah. It's a different thing to know it versus, hold it in the body, embody it.
Yeah.
It's, they're two different things. That's interesting.
Your back hurts. Mm-hmm. I've had like chronic back issues, and look back.
Yeah. What was that? Yeah. Well, the body keeps the score.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad.
Right. But boy, it's fascinating to me that the Phil Jackson book, kind of jumps off the shelf and starts to shift things for you. And what I'm intrigued by, because I kind of see you this way. I mean, even hearing you talk about, the teachers and yoga and meditation and mindfulness, and knowing that you live that, you're not the typical, politician, male, athlete, Catholic, Northeast Ohio guy, right? But you're a human being, right? And you have experiences in life that land in the body, that affect who you are, that mm-hmm. fuel you or hold you back or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're an important person because you're just like so many others, right? And so when you talk about the work with the vets, mm-hmm. the vets need a voice like yours, right? People need a voice like yours. I've had this experience too, where I've talked about stuff publicly, trauma, the business community and environments where people don't typically talk about it. And what was so striking to me is that like how many people are like, thank you. I'm just like that too.
Right.
And so, it sort of feels like a divine, intervention. This book lands in your lap of a voice that you can hear. Yeah. Right. And today you're that for so many people, but I don't know, maybe elaborate on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think really I grew up with that worldview, my mom, again, very Catholic, but not very dogmatic, but very spiritual in the sense that a lot of time praying the rosary. It's meditation. Right. It's a mantra-based meditation that has, lasted this long, something to it. And so it was very spiritual. My mom would say things like, the Lord works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways. And there was always this kind of sense of, you'd say, well, was Jesus really a human? And was he God's child? These questions you would ask. And the priests would say, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. It's okay to embrace that kind of unknown. And, when you're young and then you get on the track, you're like, well, I kind of want to know what the unknown is. But there was an unknown there. Not that this is the rule, damn it, and you follow it or you're going to go to hell. You know what I mean? For Pete's sake, right? And so that kind of divine path, I always felt like I was supposed to do something unique, and in my role models growing up were Bernie Kosar. I was like, what the fuck's this guy doing in the NFL? Right. But he's like the best, right? I mean, he didn't blow the drive, he didn't blow the fumble. The drives before those drives was Bernie Kosar producing at the highest level. Maximum pressure, delivering every time, right? But like, what's he doing there? What's Larry Bird doing there? I was always like kind of the maverick, the person who wasn't like the underdog.
You were struck by that.
It was like, but I knew I was on a path for that. I was okay with that. I was really always okay with, when I was in Congress and I went on a meditation retreat, power mindfulness with John Kabat-Zinn, blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. And I walked out of there and I talked to John and I said, man, this is unbelievable. I said, we need this in healthcare. We need this in schools. Our kids need this. Our vets, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, there's people in all of these fields that are doing this and they're doing research in this. And I said, I'm going to write a book about this. So you could imagine when I went to my chief of staff and my political team, and I'm like, I'm going to write a book. And they're like, that's a great idea. What are you going to write about? And I'm like, meditation. They're like, somebody pulled it. But I was doing it. No one was going to tell me, and I'm very stubborn in that way too. Like I'm doing it. And just like get on board.
Yeah. It is sort of something that I think if you can recognize that that's who you are, it's really powerful. When we started building our communities and started talking about having, TM introductions in the community or landmark forum or any of the kind of woo-woo stuff that, people weren't accustomed to seeing on a pro forma. The banker was like, okay, that's cool, but how much rent are you charging? But there is something there. It's, kind of who you are, which is like, this is my thing and I'm going to be unique and different in the world and approach this in this sort of maverick way.
Totally.
Tell me, before we go down the path of the book and that any further, I want to hear how you got into politics. You think you're going to take over for Bernie or Brian Sipe or whoever, was the quarterback, in the day. But you played college sports, right? You played college football.
Yeah, a little
bit. And so how does your path get on the political track?
So I went to Youngstown State when Tressel was there. He recruited me and I was a quarterback. And that was going to be, that was the path. And I was there that summer, and we were, I think, into August, and we started scrimmaging. So the old turf, like the old turf. So 1991 turf. And just blew the shit out of my knee, ACL, meniscus, blah, blah, blah. Still got the, old school scar. It's not like the guys from like the 70s or 80s where they like got bit by a shark.
Right.
But it's big.
Yeah.
And I just lost my desire, I just kind of lost the edge that I think that you definitely need. And I was just like, to play at that level, if you don't have the fire in your belly, it's just better off not playing. And, you know, and sometimes like that was maybe a moment where I wish my dad was involved because it would be like, fuck you, you're staying. You're going to give it one more year. Maybe you can't, but you're going to stay. And I rehabbed it, and I did come back and I played in one game, but I just lost my, and I don't know if somebody would have kicked me in the ass and said, this is what life's about. You got to stay. Yeah. And so, all my buddies were at Bowling Green. And so I was just like kind of lost the edge, and I just like I'm going to go to Bowling Green, go hang out with my guys. And, and that was really tough. That was like an identity crisis. Not looking back on it, was like, I was going to be the Browns quarterback. Like I convinced myself of shit like that. Like that's the path. That's where I'm going. And I think as you get older, that's fine. It's just, how do you smooth over those transitions when you don't get what you want? Not that you have to necessarily give it up. I mean, in that regard, sometimes you do, but like new worlds open up to you. And how do you gracefully try to, just like with the most recent loss for Senate, you got to gracefully figure out how to move on. And so that was pretty traumatic, because that was my identity since I was a boy, and driving all that trauma into sports, that became my identity. And then to lose that was really difficult. I mean, I had to find my way, and so I went to Bowling Green. My buddies were there. As soon as I got there, I joined their fraternity, Delta Tau Delta, and they had just gotten kicked off campus. So there was like this crisis within so I ran for president of the fraternity. That's how I was like, okay, what's the next phase here? And as I was doing that, and all my buddies were in the fraternity from back home. They all went to public school. I went to Catholic school, but they were my guys growing up. And anyway, so as I was doing the president of the fraternity, Joseph Campbell came into my life, the mythologist. Sure. And he blew my mind.
Oh yeah.
And just journey. I mean, it was just like, being Catholic. I was at a Delta Tau Delta convention in Atlanta because I was the president. We had to go down. It was called Carnia, and I'm in the hotel room, and Joseph Campbell's on PBS. They turned the TV on, and PBS was the station they had on, and this guy starts talking about virgin births. Now, 13 years of Catholic school, right? Mary is the virgin mother of the Son of God. So I'm like, virgin births? What's this guy talking about? And he was going through the motifs of any culture who has a story about a savior. The savior is born to a virgin. Holy shit. What is this? And that was the beginning. Like, who is this guy? And I just, I got the Power Myth with Bill Moyers and watch that a million different times, and Follow Your Bliss, and, consciousness, and all of these things. And just, that was like this whole world opened up, of which mindfulness was like a component of that, because how he spoke about, I could just tell how he favored the East, and their view of the world and their connection to nature, and the West's cutting off from nature, that, the original sin is like us being disconnected from our nature too. And I just blew my mind. And so I was moving into this next phase, and now I got, Joseph Campbell in my back pocket. And that just kind of like, and he was very much a maverick himself on how he thought and how he taught. And so that reinforced the Larry Bird, the Bernie Kosar, the Phil Jackson, do it differently. This guy's thinking way different than anybody I've ever heard in my life. And like, I'm with these guys, you know, I'm with these guys. Then at the same time, I'm starting to listen to Dave Matthews, like Carpe Diem. They're bootlegging tapes to get famous, right? I mean, people were just, it was like the original grassroots campaign.
Sure.
And so like that all just kind of in the early 90s, mid 90s, all just kind of came together. And that's when, I did an internship in DC for Jim Trafficant. Very much a maverick, landed him in prison. But he was a very charismatic congressman up in Youngstown. Delivered for his community, very much like a Huey Long, where the public is like in love with this guy, and behind the scenes he thinks it's 1960, so he's still taking like 10,000 in cash.
Right.
Like he you know, there, and then you learn, that was a big lesson for me too, is like there are these people who they're very talented, they come out of an older era, and the times changed. They didn't.
They don't change yet.
So he's like, 20 years before. No one would have known.
You see a lot of that. You see a lot of, especially like the narrative that everybody's doing it. People have been doing it forever. And
part of the job. Part of the job.
Oh boy, I'm sure you've seen more than that than you'd like to talk about or know. But tell me just one thing. It was kind of sitting with me. Why did you decide to be the president of the fraternity? I mean, just you step right in and you want to be president, What was in you? Do you remember? Was there something there that had you like, feeling like you wanted to do this?
It was just like it was like rudderless. And I was like, I could figure this out. I mean, if I could run a college offense, I could figure out like, how to get these guys together. And I think it was like an immediate opportunity that I saw to lead, because being a quarterback is very much about being leadership. So
that's kind of what I was thinking, just to connect those dots. I mean, even, going back, and I don't know exactly, we were joking about this before we started recording, how far back do you go with this, but it does seem like, even to step into the quarterback role, to want to do that. Now, sometimes that's like just the best athlete on the field, ends up being quarterback. But then you're there and you do need to lead. Everybody's looking at you. And so that becomes, or maybe always was, who you are, is a leader. And so I thought, in my mind, like, of course he was going to just become president of the fraternity. and that seems, maybe it's trivial to some people, frats, whatever, but like, it ends up being, again, I don't know if it's divine intervention or what it is, but now you're at a conference and the TV's playing Joseph Campbell and your life just starts to really take shape by, what some might say are random events, but it's hard to ignore the connectivity there.